everybody. Aiden here, and welcome into today's episode of Around the Slice. So, the bulk of free agency, for all intents and purposes, is now over, or at least the first big two or three initial waves, per se, at least for our purposes, for the most part, have now come and gone. So, as promised a few days ago, I wanted to do one final check in with you guys to discuss remaining needs for the Buffalo Bills. What is still left on Brandon Beane's to-do list, checklist, if you will, if you would, rather, and what players could he target at those said positions of need and hopefully eventually sign. So today, before we get into that though, we have a few final exact contract terms and details to go over, courtesy of Spot Track on Twitter/X over the last day or so. So first, the contract details have come out on safety CJ Gardner-Johnson. So it has already previously been established that it's a 1 year, keyword though, up to max value of $6 million. But now we know the base value of it before any incentives are baked in. Base value of 1 year, $3.5 million, that can get up to a max value of $6 million with certain playing time incentives and such. This one's a bit more nuanced. Bradley Chubb contract details. Previously established 3 years, $43.5 million, equates to $14.5 million per year. I discussed an initial reaction. I love the talent. I am just very concerned with the very extensive injury history, sadly and unfortunately. But now we know that it includes $21.75 million guaranteed. Practically, if you want to look at it that, practically for Beane in his front office, it's a 2 year, $29 million deal. And I'm going to provide the cap hits for you right now, but we can get out of it after the second year, between the second and third year, before that third year kicks in. So the cap hits are as follows. This year, we start with $6.5 million, 2026. Pretty good value. Next year, 2027, we have an $11 million cap hit. Still pretty damn good for a valuable pass rusher, assuming he stays healthy by then. This is where I get concerned. $20.5 million, 2028, and then $6 million, 2029, which is a void year, which I hate, but GMs bake it in to kind of safeguard against themselves, if you would. But before 2028, we see here $20.5 million cap hit, barring anything unforeseen, staying perfectly healthy and productive this whole entire time, well into his early 30s here. We should be able to move on at that point. And then where does this place him, you might ask? I don't have an exact number, but for all intents and purposes, Bradley Chubb is right around, at this moment in time in this new deal, right around the 30th highest paid edge rusher in terms of AAV. So considering his injury history and just all that's baked into that stuff, I'm really down for that for sure. Next, before we get into the good stuff for today, we have DJ Moore restructure details, which we've been waiting on the last week or so since we traded for him. So this is a drastic restructure. $22.185 million of his 2026 salary number was converted into a straight up signing bonus. What that means is one void year was added to the back end of it. Again, I hate void years, but GMs have to do it for their financials. And then this is significant. $17.7 million in 2026 cap space cleared. So right now, we're going to talk about some big fish that are still left in the market today that could be wisely used for cap hits. So $6.75 million this year. And then this is not a steady jump. This is as drastic of a jump as you can get. 3 straight years of huge ballooned up cap hits. In 2027, 28, and 29, again, 3 years in a row specifically, a $28.9 million cap hit in each year. Now that's well worth it. Second round pick be damned. This cap hit be damned, blah, blah, blah. If we can get DJ Moore, the missing piece that we wanted. Now, everyone's been clamoring, Aiden, other sources. What is our current cap situation with Brandon Beane and the Bills? Well, it's not an exact science, unfortunately, but we have a rough estimate, again, courtesy of Spot Track on Twitter/X. We're sitting at right around $12.6 million in 2026 cap space right now, but please keep in mind that does not take into account, and it's not including the CJGJ Gardner Johnson signing, the Geno Stone signing, which for some reason we still don't have numbers on, and the Mitch Wisnowski punter re-signing for whatever that matters. So just keep that into account. But before all that, that's where we're sitting. Other cap clearing possibilities, real quick. If we want to get more money, if we're dire for it, if we want to sign more players, that we'll go over today, which we would hopefully. Deion Dawkins restructure, you can pull that lever. Again, I'm not doing that because I have legitimate concerns. How does Deion Dawkins age? With Aaron Cromer gone now, does he continue to quote unquote decline? If there's a penalty, sacks, and pressures given up, we'll have to see. Michael Hoyt restructure. 1, it only clears a few $1,000,000. And 2, Michael Hoyt says he's going to be ready for week 1, but who the hell knows at this point. This is what I would do. Osiris Torrance extension, right guard Saibo, Osiris Torrance. I would extend him. You lost David Edwards. Keep a key pillar at guard in place. Josh Palmer restructure. Who knows if he's going to be even on the team next year. So why the hell would you restructure him and commit to him even more? Dorian Williams extension. I think the thought is really fun and exciting with Dorian Williams being weaponized as a true off-the-ball linebacker, pass rusher hybrid type. He's pretty poor in coverage and underwhelming there under Jim Leonard, but we'll have to see how it plays out. The only move I'm doing there is the Osiris Torrance Saibo extension, and maybe you could justify Dorian Williams extension, but that's it. Now, I want to talk about needs that have already been filled and addressed throughout the last week and a half or so of free agency. Basically, what I'm logically thinking here is if the position I'm about to give you, if we don't add a single other player at this position, it's fine by me. I'm completely satisfied and content right now if we don't add a single other body. QB2, starting off with the QB room, QB2 has been filled. Josh Allen's backup. Mitch Trubisky chases the money and opportunity to tutor Cam Ward in Tennessee. Maybe spot start if needed, injury or otherwise. And we bring in Kyle Allen. I'm not a fan, but Josh Allen's buddy's in the room, so QB2's been filled. RB, this is only me theorizing if they could save a few million by moving on from Ty Johnson. I'm really glad they didn't do that, so that doesn't need to be talked about. Tight end 3, you got Kincaid, you got Knox, you got Kincaid and Hawes, and now you do have Knox too on the dressed up extension. Tackle depth, this was just as simple as bringing back Ryan Vandermark. We discussed a few days ago / last week that he was brought back on the 1 year, $3.5 million tender. Center, big money, Connor McGovern. Big value, as we've seen other guys such as Tyler Linderbaum, Creed Humphrey, etc. Slot corner, you have legitimate competition there now. You move on from Taron Johnson. You get D. Elford in there. You get CJ Gardner Johnson there, So, yeah. And then safety, you have a locked-in starter in Cole Bishop. Crazy how in literally just a week's time, our safety room went from pretty bleak to loaded at that position all of a sudden in a week's time frame. You have a locked-in starter in Cole Bishop, and then you have a ton of competition for how it's going to shake out the other spot between CJ Gardner Johnson, Geno Stone. Unfortunately, you did lose Cam Lewis, but maybe that opens an avenue for DeMar Hamlin to come back. And for special teams purposes, and then the versatility of Jordan Hancock. So if we didn't add a single other body at those handful of positions I just mentioned, I'll be perfectly satisfied and content. Remaining needs. So the Buffalo Bills, in my opinion, have it got cut off. 7 on my notes here. 7 remaining needs. I'm going to rank them in terms of I'm not satisfied. Number 1, it means I'm not satisfied at all yet. And number 7, we just need a depth body or 2 here, and then we're good to go. Number 1, linebacker. There's 2 steps here. Step 1, move effing Terrell Bernard to weak side linebacker from middle linebacker. His skill set projects much better, specifically and especially in this, Jim Leonard defense. Step 2, get a legitimate linebacker out there, true middle linebacker. Name out that we're going to discuss today, veteran or otherwise. Number 2, defensive tackle. So Ed Oliver's your locked-in starter, but next to him, TJ Sanders didn't show much. Deion Walker had flashes. Leo Ogunjobi was a complete flop. No No wonder he hasn't been re-signed. Specifically, I want a big run-stuffing nose tackle. Guys like just big blobs in the middle to eat big blobs in the middle to just eat up blocks and swallow guys whole. So that came out wrong. To just eat up blocks. Roy Lopez and Karastonga would have been great, but they went elsewhere in good value deals. Number 3, pass rusher, defensive end. I like Greg Rousseau. I love the talent with Bradley Chubb. I'll say it over again, just very concerned about the injury history. I think Bradley Chubb, it would behoove all parties involved for Bradley Chubb to rotate with some young guy, whether that be through the first round come April or free agency still left. Number 4, left guard. I have a few names for that as well, jotted down here today that we're going to go into. The guard market hasn't moved as quickly as I would have predicted at the beginning of this whole entire process, which is good for the Bills because there's few very good options still available. Lost David Edwards, but slot someone in there. Number 5, wide receiver. So I'm looking for one specific skill set as wide receiver now that we traded for DJ Moore. I just want a speed demon, a straight line speed guy, whether that's a Casey Concepcion in the first round or just some speed demons that we're going to sign today. That's the one specific skill set I want to sign going forward. These last 2 are just pure depth options. Number 6, corner. I personally think it's as simple as re-sign Trey White, assuming he doesn't retire. Re-sign Trey White, Dorian Strong. Hopefully he can play football again and ready to roll, but we haven't done either of those. Brought back Troy White yet, so it's worth bringing up. Number 7, fullback. Now you could say Aiden, the Bills clearly don't want a fullback anymore because it's hard for me to talk about this because he shattered my heart in half. But Sledge going to the Patriots, so maybe the Bills don't want a fullback anymore. Well, slow your roll there. They do, and for all intents and purposes, for the most part, absolutely do, because reportedly them and the Raiders were in on Adam Prentice before he re-signed with the Broncos. So I have one option for that as well. We're going to go in order here, 1 to 7 for all these players, starting with linebacker and ending off with the 1 fullback at corner and then the 1 fullback I mentioned. So with all these players, again, there's only a few options, give or take at each position. They're still valuable and floating around there and all that crap. But I'm going to give you their age at the start of next season. So their age as of September 3rd, 2026. Their measurements, obviously, and then what Spotrac is projecting them to get on their new deal. A guy that was released a couple weeks ago. He's been a long time tackling machine and pretty underrated in coverage as well. That is linebacker Bobby Okereke. You can make the obvious connection here because our linebacker coach, Bill's linebacker coach, John, I'm going to butcher the hell is his name, John Arugo. That's normal. John Arugo, whatever the hell. He was the Giants inside linebackers coach last year, so make the obvious connection with Bobby Okereke in the 2 there. 6'2", 235. I want someone with size and legit replace with some coverage ability. I don't need some downhill thumper, some blitz aggressive guy like Terrell Bernard who needs to be moved to weak side. Okereke, 6'2", 235, 30 years old. Again, tons of experience, high-level tackler, pretty underrated coverage guy as well. $12.1 million per year Spotrac projection. For a bounce-back guy, that's not very. I think that's a little overpriced. I'm willing to go up to 8 or 9. That's kind of what I'm thinking right now. I don't think this is the type of linebacker you do splurge at 10. Next guy was actually a handful of years ago, teammates with Josh Allen at Wyoming for a couple of years, interestingly enough. How many of those guys do you see around the league these days? Especially with Josh Allen, no less. And that is Logan Wilson, who a couple of years ago, last year, got benched in Cincinnati for Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight, a couple of day 3 rookies out of all people. And then got traded to the Cowboys, and the Cowboys defense was a mess. But this is a reclamation project for sure. 6'2", 245, more than sufficient size, 30 years old, and $2.5 million per year Spotrac projection. If you can get a guy that has proven coverage ability, he's kind of mediocre as a tackler, but we have trouble enough for that. Proven coverage ability, legit size in the past, reclamation project, if you would, for $2-3 million. Outstanding. Next, this guy's a future first ballot Hall of Famer. 99.9% sure of that. A legacy dude for sure. Bobby Wagner, 6 foot, but 242 pounds, 36 years old, $7.7 million per year Spotrac projection. after being at the Commanders for the last couple of years. Why not sign a 1 year, $7 or $8 million deal with the Buffalo Bills and help be the literally and figuratively, the green dot player of that defense at middle linebacker. Next, this is kind of lower tier, the lowest tier guy of all four guys that we're going to discuss today, have discussed at linebacker rather. And this is just solely based off of the Jim Leonard, Wisconsin connection. Jack Sanborn, 6'2", 234 pounds, 26 years old, 2.1 million per year spot check projection. If you want to go true value and true Leonard with college connection from Wisconsin between the two, you go with that. Defensive tackle, again, specifically, I want a big ass run stuffing nose tackle to clog up the middle. DJ Reader. At one point, DJ Reader was a phenomenal pass rusher on the inside for his size, but now he's just a high-level nose tackle, which is just what we need. Run stuffer. 6'3", 330 pounds, so just stand there and look at his size. 32 years old, 3.9 million is spot check projection. I think that's actually a little conservative. I think he deserves more, like 4.5, 5 per. I would sign him to like one of them 2 years, 10 million. Make a year or two commitment to that, front load the first year, and if his age continues to show, you can move on fine. But that's what I'm thinking. Next, Calais Campbell, consummate pro, consummate professional, age like fine wine. I have never seen Calais Campbell has aged in this league better than any player I've ever seen before. It's absurd the way he ages year in and year out. 6'8", 315, 40 years old. He's still humming. Still awesome. 10.9 million per year spot check projection. He's very good on the inside. He's very good off the edge. He's still in sack production. He's still an awesome elite run defender. He's got it all. If you want to splurge for that, I'm more than welcome. Greg Gaines, a guy that I've kind of cooled off on a little. The problem with Greg Gaines is he's a good enough run stuffer, but he's never really been a high-end rotation guy. He's been a low-end rotation guy, handful of snaps here and there. So if you want just value, veteran depth, you could go. I just kind of wish hopefully we go for a bigger name than this, but 6'1", you can only spend value. 6'1", 312 pounds, 29 years old, 2 million per year, spot check projection. Again, 2.5 per year, somewhere on there, maybe 3 if you want to find true value to pair with another higher end guy that we've already discussed. Next, Foley Fatukasi. So this is interesting. The Texans had all these defensive tackles free agents this offseason. Sheldon Rankins, they brought back. Tim Settle went to the Commanders. Nico Autry still floating out there. No, I don't want him. Too old special teams guy at this point. And then Foley Fatukasi, who I think has been underrated his entire career. I think he's an underrated pass rusher from the interior and an underrated high-level run stuffer as well. 6'4", 318 pounds, 31 years old, 2 million per year spot check projection. You could look at this as depth, but it's just a better version of Greg Gaines, who we discussed just a few moments ago. Next, defensive end. Now, I personally think if someone like Cassius Howell, because of the short-ass arm length, or TJ Parker for fizzling out at Clemson last year, not nearly living up to the hype, I personally want to go that route, 26. But maybe those guys are gone, and maybe the Bills trade back. Those guys are gone, and we can find some value in free agency. Hassan Reddick, this guy had quite the weird few years here. I'll explain it. 6'1", 240, 31 years old, 4.9 million per year spot production. I think that's a big conservative. 5 or 6 million as a bounce back candidate. I say bounce back candidate because for 3 straight years, I believe from like 2020 to 22, he had 12 plus sacks to every single year. Like legitimately one of the best pass rushers in the entire NFL, not named like mega stars like Michael Parsons, Myles Garrett, some other people. You get the point though. And then he goes to the Jets. Apparently he hates Robert Saleh's guts because he sits out and then they can't come to a contract. The personality-wise is a little weird. Then he goes to the Buccaneers last year. He gets hurt right away in training camp. Then when he does come back, he barely gets any playing time for a team that desperately needed pass rush in the worst way possible. He's been on a weird trajectory, but if you want to get him in Buffalo, if you want burst and bend, which I very much do, in speed, burst and bend, and Jim Leonard's more blitz, aggressive, man-heavy defense that I keep talking about, well, shit, you got Hassan Reddick here as a bounce back. Leonard Floyd, a few years ago, he signs in June of 2023, I believe it was that year, and lo and behold, goes on to have 10.5 sacks for us. He had like 4 or 5 straight years at that point of 10 plus sacks. 6'6", 240 pounds, 34 years old, $8.9 million per year spot check projection. I think 8 or 9, as long as it's not double digits, Thorn in there. Fine. Damn it, just do it, Beane. He's a one-trick pony. He's a true speed rusher at this point in his career, but that's okay. That's what I want. We don't need run stuffers. We already have Greg Rousseau at the position for that crap. Next, this is a legacy player, probably Hall of Famer as well. Cam Jordan seems like he's finally moving on from the Saints. Oversized at the edge position for sure, but he's a freaky mover at that size. He's equally as good still as a run defender and pure edge rusher. 6'4", 287 pounds, 37 years old, $6.8 million per year spot check projection. So if you want to go full veteran heavy opposite Greg Rousseau, you have one veteran, Bradley Chubb, who's very good, but extensive injury history. And then you have another high-level veteran, Cam Jordan, who's a likely first ballot Hall of Famer. And those two can rotate, and then maybe you still use a high-level draft pick. Next, Derek Barnett. For the past few years, every time this guy's been a free agent, I want him so badly. 6'3", 200, what is that? Sorry, that's not that. 6'3", 259 pounds, 30 years old at this point. I didn't realize it was that. Still like mid to late 20s, it feels like. But $4.4 million per year spot check projection. He was a legitimately great starter for the Eagles when he first came into the league. It's not his fault. He was stuck behind literally two all-pro players, caliber pass rushers, and Williamson, Daniel Hunter, the last 3 years in Houston. This is the perfect type of player to rotate with Bradley Chubb opposite Greg Rousseau. I think he deserves more snaps than he's gotten the last few years in Houston. And then the one-year mercenary, one-year hired gun, if you will, for all intents and purposes, for the most part. Jadeveon Clowney, listen, we're going to have to wait a few months still. He doesn't sign until June or even, July every year. And then he goes on to have double-digit plus sacks every year. 6'5", 260 pounds, 33 years old, $5.7 million per year spot check projection. This is just like Leonard Floyd, high tools, flex, speed type rusher. He's just a better version, more consistent Leonard Floyd, in my opinion. Now we have left guard, which has kind of been overlooked. So I've said in this podcast many times, I personally believe that Alec Anderson can be a starter, but I don't think the team agrees, unfortunately and sadly, just because 1 year, $2.5 million is nowhere near starting money, let alone the market starting left guard money. First, we have former Cleveland Brown Joel Bitonio. There were rumors he would retire, but he's been pretty damn healthy outside of last year in his career. 6'4", 320, 34 years old. $12.9 million per year spot check projection. I think he gets a little too much hate as a veteran at this point in his career. Look at the environment he was in last year in Cleveland. I think he's a very underrated, very good run penetrator. What's the term I'm looking for? I think he's very good in run blocker. There it is. And pass pro and pass blocker. Next, we have Kevin Zeitler. Full transparency, admittedly, he's technically a right guard for the most part of his career, for the most part, but I mean, we'll just flip over left guard. He's been an all-pro before, Pro Bowl before. He can let that big deal, guys. 6'4", 332 pounds, 36 years old. He comes in for 1 year, balls out, and he's very good. He mixes pass pro and run pro so well. $9.2 million per year spot check projection, 8 or 9 as long as you don't go double digits. That's very attractive option to me. And then James Daniels, he's been touted in the past. This is kind of the offensive version of Logan Wilson. For my connection on the team, Logan Wilson, Josh Allen connection. James Daniels has a connection with our current O-line coach. Our current O-line coach, Pat Meyer, was the O-line coach of Pittsburgh when James Daniels had by far the best few years of his career with the Steelers. Last year, though, with the Dolphins, unfortunately, sadly, whatever, he missed all but 3 or 4 games due to a serious knee injury. 6'4", 320 pounds, 28 years old, $6.8 million per year spot check projection. If you get great intel from Pat Meyer still at this stage of his coaching career and stuff, then I am all for it. Next, wide receiver. I still would like to add some gadget, run after cut speed elements to this room. First up, Deebo Samuel. I was not on this just a couple of years ago. Geez. No, I love Deebo. Jesus, a couple of years ago, but couple weeks ago, before we traded for DJ Moore, when everyone was claiming for Deebo, I was not in on Deebo at that point for trading for Moore as I talked about this with my dad yesterday, the move at wide receiver this offseason. But now, in addition to, on top of DJ Moore, I think it's a skill set that would project to this offense very well. 6 foot, 215, 30 years old, 15.8 million per year spot check projection. Now, I think at this point in his career, because of his athleticism and ability to maybe not absorb as much contact at this point in his career, 30 years old now, going on 31. He's a slot-only player, but I think you could do a lot of fun things with him in terms of lining him up at the backfield, gadget plays, sending him at the wheel routes out of the backfield. I think this would be a very fun skill set. And the Bills have tried this before, gadget guys like Curtis Samuel, Elijah Moore, and company over there, but Debo is a much more proven skill set than those two stupid players. Next, Juwan Jennings. I'll admit this would be a splurge, but a well-worth splurge in my opinion. I've discussed it this entire time. Juwan Jennings doesn't have one single trump card, if you would, for the most part. He doesn't do any one thing at an exceptional level, but he's a jack of all trades, whereas he does everything at a very good level. He brings a ton to the table in terms of very diverse skill set and trait tree, if you would. 6'3", 212 pounds, 29 years old. Spot track is very steep and aggressive on this. 22.8 million per year spot track projection. I doubt you'd be willing to take this little compared to that projection. If you take 14, 15 million per year, considering what Dobbs and Sheed got from their respective teams, then I'm all for it. I just don't know how realistic it is, but I would love it. DeAndre Hopkins. People are going to say, DeAndre Hopkins is washed. Sure, as a top 2-3 option in your passing game, but as a fourth wide receiver who has some of the best hands I've seen of the 21st century, of the past 2 decades, literally, in the NFL. Like, damn, I want that on my team, man. So, 6'1", 210 pounds, 34 years old, 1.5 million per year spot check projection, slightly above the league minimum. Crazy to think for a player like him. Probably a Hall of Famer. As your wide receiver 4, big red zone threat for what, 50, 60 targets, if that per year? You got to start thinking about it more for sure. Next, Noah Brown, true height weight speed guy down the field for handful, 30, pushing 40 targets a year. 6'2", 225, 30 years old, 2 million per year spot check projection. I think he's still a great depth piece, personally. Next, corner. Again, it's just simple as hoping Jordan Strong can play again and then just bring back Trey White, but we haven't done those things yet, so here we go. L'Jarius Sneed, 6'1", 192, 29 years old, no projection because he literally just got caught a week ago. Give it a week ago, time frame wise. But yeah, I would love with L'Jarius Sneed as a depth piece, not a starting corner, because you have Christian Bedford and Max Harrison, those slot competitions, though, as a legit depth piece who's shown stardom flashes in the past. Adoree Jackson, who I think at this point in his career is the definition of a veteran depth piece. 5'11", 185 pounds, 30 years old, 1.8 million per year spot track projection. Next, we have Cam Taylor-Britt, who I think he could play inside and out, obviously for the most outside. He's been a high-level starter in the past. Maybe we bring him on as a reclamation project from formerly of Cincinnati, who knows. 5'11", 200, 26 years old. We're looking at 9.2 million per year spot check projection. I think that's a few million aggressive. I'm looking at 6, maybe 7 million on a good day. So, yeah. Next, Martin Emerson, MJ Emerson, as they call him. 6'2", 201, 26 years old. So, in the past, he's played slot corner, but I think he's very good depth at both spots. Next, we got Ahkello Witherspoon. Ahkello Witherspoon, everyone seems to forget about him. He signs in June and July every year, and then once he's called upon, he fills in very admirably and then goes back to the bench. 6'2", 215. So this is a tall, physical-ass corner, 31 years old, 1.4 million per year spot check projection, slightly above the league minimum. He's just steady as they come. So, yeah. Next, Michael Davis. This guy's tall and lanky. 6'2", but 196, slender, 31 years old. He has a ton of special teams upside. He's bounced around, but quality, sufficient enough depth. Next one, Darian Kendrick. A bounce back candidate. This has been a weird journey. I'm personally invested in. I would be very much interested. 6 foot, 190, 26 years old, 2.2 million per year spot check projection. He's got a ton of athleticism, and he would be a direct back up to Max Harrison, who also has a ton of athleticism. Now, the one fullback, things are shattered my heart in half sledge. I'll never live it down. I'll never let him live it down. F the Patriots, man. Fullback Michael Burton, 5'11", 247, 34 years old. Kick-ass blocker, whether it was winning Super Bowls with the Chiefs or otherwise. Quick kind of timing note here. So it is currently, for a frame of reference, it is currently 2:00 p.m. on Tuesday, 2:00 p.m. on Tuesday, March 17th, at the time of recording of this. So if any of these players have signed or been brought in by other teams by the time you're watching or listening to this, well, I don't know about it. So just please keep that in mind as we go forward here. Top 15. So the couple linebackers, a couple veteran Bobbies here. 1, Bobby Okereke in terms of desire. 2, linebacker Bobby Wagner. 3, defensive tackle DJ Reader. Not really pass rusher anymore like he used to be at a high level. 4, defensive tackle Calais Campbell. Never seen a player age like him. Like, what the hell? It makes no sense, but here he is. Number 5, defensive end Jadeveon Clowney. Number 6, defensive end Cam Jordan, if you want to go the legacy route. Number 7, left guard Joel Bitonio, who I think is, people don't realize how good he is still. Number 8, left guard Kevin Zeitler, always bounces around, finds one-year homes, and contributes greatly. Number 9, wide receiver Deebo Samuel, who I think at this point in his career is a slot only, but you can do some very fun stuff with him. Number 10, top 10, wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, who, if you want one of the best receivers of the last 21st century, of the last 2 decades, give or take, then the wide receiver 4, jump ball specialist in the end zone, 50 to 60 targets per year, give or take. Hell yeah. Anyways, guys, we're resetting the needs for the Bills. Went over some contract details, which were fun, courtesy of Spot Trek and Twitter/X. We went over the Bills' remaining needs. We went over what needs they have already forward with, and there are some there are some pretty decent options still left on the board, if you will. Anyways, guys, you can follow me on Twitter/X at @Weingartner13 for any additional Buffalo Bills and or NFL thoughts, opinions, or discussions over there. You can follow the show on X and support it on Twitter/X at Around Slice. You can watch or listen to this podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or of course, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Speaking of YouTube, 1, please like and subscribe to the channel. It's going to be a blast as always. But number 2, let me know down in the comments below on YouTube, what do you think of the Bills' free agency so far? But more specifically, in relation to today's conversation, what are the Bills' needs? And then maybe I missed a player or two, but more specifically, what players do you want the Brandon Beane, the Bills front office in particular, to bring in to fill said needs as we go forward? And yeah, I think that's all the plugs for today we got. Quick note, so I already discussed the time frame of this recording. Again, reminder, 2:00 p.m., Tuesday, March 17th, at the time of all this discussion/conversation. Barring anything drastic, which who knows, there's always breaking news this time of year, but for our purposes, it seems like it's died down. But maybe if the Bills sign one of these high-level guys that we signed today, I'll jump on. But for a formal, planned out episode, I think this is going to be our last conversation for the next couple weeks, because quickly, I want to let you know that I'm going on vacation next week for a couple weeks. So I'm not going to be back with an episode till early April, a few days after Easter, to record and then get it out to you guys. So please just keep that in mind. That's why follow me on Twitter at @Weingartner13 is so important for my immediate thoughts for a situation like this. So please just keep that note. But we'll be back for them for breaking news. But for planning purposes, that's what I got going on. Anyways, guys, thank you for the support as always. I will see you on the next one. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the kind of rest of underrated deals that come in. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.